Phillies kind of picked the right spot to jump into the landscape, into the conversation. So to talk a little Phillies with us, we got to bring our buddy Kevin Cooney in, PhillyVoice, Forbes, longtime baseball writer, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. He's also the host of the Working the Beat podcast with Mike Kern, who you heard earlier today with Mays and Aton, and he joins us now on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, what's going on, bud?
Not much, Mike. I'm always excited to hear what Tony says about the Cowboys because I know it's going to be impartial and full of energy for that one.
That's right. Well,
you're half right.
We've been teasing all day that people need to hear what you're going to have to say about this Wheeler signing because I think there's a lot of 50-50 here. Some people like it, some people don't. So, Kevin Cooney, break the tie.
I'm not in love with it. I got to admit, and the rationale is simple, and it's based on a couple different levels. It's one, last year they could have spent the same money for Patrick Corbin, who I think is certainly a better pitcher. Doesn't have nearly the injury history that Zack Wheeler has. It was more consistent. I mean, the one thing with Wheeler, if you look at his splits, there are half-season chunks in the last 2 years where he looks great in the second half of the year, but his first half of the season are just awful. And, I'm sorry if I'm paying $120 million for a guy and going to have him on my roster for 5 years. I better feel a little better about it than I do with Zack Wheeler. Two, and I think this is the other thing, it's what this contract may do to them as far as trying to get another starting pitcher in here. This was a multiple layer of problems that they had. This wasn't just a one guy solves everything. So with Cole Hamels now off the market, I don't think they're going to go after Madison Bumgarner. Where are you going to find this second pitcher? Because you only have, depending on the accounts, Todd Zalecki I think had it at 16.5, and Matt Gelb had it around 20 of room under the luxury tax. They have a lot of holes to fill, and it just seems like they spent big for one big ticket item, and I don't know if this ticket item is worth what they spent.
So, Kev, because I'm definitely in the camp with you on this, and I also feel like whenever an organization starts doing the opposite of its original mantra, that's a problem, and clearly their whole grow the arms by the bats thing is not. This does not follow in line, but I also think we have to reconcile. We have to reconcile a little bit here the idea that they didn't. This is their second best pitcher, and they need a pitcher. And I'm not sure how confident they can be that they were going to get Garrett Cole or Strasburg. I mean, there are reports that they've got a seat at the table with Strasburg, so we'll see what happens there. But I'm not very confident in it. So while I agree with you, I feel like it's not the – I guess this is where we're at with the Phillies. It's not the worst thing in the world either.
It's not the worst thing in the world. And Zack Wheeler is certainly better than 4/5 of their rotation was last year. I'm not saying that. But my question is, would you – if you're going to pay a premium price for a pitcher, why not go all in?
Right.
If you're going to spend for 5 years of a Zack Wheeler, why not go 7 years of a Garrett Cole and pay instead of $30 million? It's just.
Well, let me ask you this, Kevin. What if they do? Would this signing then be acceptable?
What, if they went with Garrett Cole?
Right, like let's say out of nowhere they said, you're our 3, Cole's our 1, Nola's our 2. At that point you say, man, you guys really went all in. You went and got Wheeler to be the 3, and you got Cole to be the 1. Now that's an acceptable offseason acceptable move.
Mike, they're not going to do that. If you look at the stated goal they said in that press conference when John Middleton says, I'm not going to spend just to be a wild card. I'm going to spend to win a World Series. I don't know if you can honestly say, even if you bring Garrett Cole in, and you have the holes at shortstop, and you have the hole at center field, and you have other issues you have in the bullpen, they're still not a World Series team. So I don't think they're going to go to the over the luxury tax on that. Like, if they were going to go over the luxury tax, they would have offered Cole Hamels more than the $9 million Todd Zalecki said that they offered. They just would have, in addition to what they got for Wheeler.
That's the issue, right? It feels like they're trying to balance Middleton's desire to be a little bit Arte Moreno-ish with Klentak and the front office's desire to be Billy Beanish. You know what I'm saying? Like they're going to spend all of a sudden on guys that you didn't think they were going to spend on, but then they're also going to be, in their probably mind, calculated and measured with how they're going to disperse this money and where they're going to be as far as the luxury tax is.
And the other part of this, too, is the fact that they don't have assets to trade. You know, think about it. I mean, you know, the one guy that they could trade, if it's not going to be, you know, Alec Boehm or Howard, the pitcher, you know, is maybe Rhys Hoskins. And I don't know if they're going to go that far yet because they feel like they would be selling Rhys Hoskins low. So if that's the case, you're really limited on what you could do. It's going to be, I think, every move from here in is going to be a smaller fit-a-piece move, and let's see if they can stay under the luxury tax.
Are you buying the Chris Bryant trade or even Francisco Lindor trade market hype?
No, because they don't have enough to get either guy compared to what the Cubs and the Indians could get from other suitors, in my mind.
Kevin, then what's the ideal, offseason for you then? Because it's like, aren't they operating in such a state of desperation regarding their pitching that if they didn't feel like they could get Cole or, maybe they get Strasburg still, I don't know if that's the best route to go, you tell me. But, I mean, what are their options, I guess is what I'm asking. And what would your ideal, signings be? Because, like you said, they don't really have a ton of trade pieces. They're somewhat limited.
Yeah, and I think especially if they're going to pin themselves in on the luxury tax, they are really limited. And if they're pinned on the luxury tax, then Steven Strasburg's not going to be a Philly. Garrett Cole's not going to be a Philly. Maybe D. Gregorius ends up as your shortstop, and that'll work well because I think if you look at it, it fits well with what Joe Girardi wants to do. Maybe they hope they could get a reclamation year from Jake Arrieta, who's going to be a free agent at the end of next season. And maybe Brian Price, they feel, can work his magic with him. Brian Price is a good pitching coach. There's no doubt about it. If you followed him in Seattle and Arizona and Cincinnati, Price has done some pretty good jobs. Compared
don't
to
put a microphone in front of him.
Exactly. And don't give him the lineup card because he's an awful manager. That's a whole different story. I mean, if this is all the case, this is probably the way it's going to be. I still think I think they're better than the Mets, but are they better than the Nationals?
You really got us excited, Kevin.
I mean,
I'm not sure they are, to be honest with you. But
what, better than the Mets?
Yeah, I mean, whose young talent would you take right now? Would you take Peter Alonso, McNeil, DeGrom, and Syndergaard, or Bryce Harper and the Hoskins and Kingery?
I think though, if you look at it, the Phillies probably. Like, I'm not a big Marcus Stroman fan, and Stroman obviously is who I think they're going to try to fit into that third and fourth spot in the rotation.
He'd be the Phillies' second-best pitcher, too.
Right. But a lot of things went right for the Mets in the second half of the year, and I just don't know if it pieces together the same way for them this year. That's just me.
Kev, with Wheeler on board, you imagine Arrieta would be your 3. Is Velazquez in the rotation again, or is this them finally saying, all right, he's going to the bullpen? I mean, or no, do they say, we need another guy and Velazquez is in the rotation?
I just on the podcast, we had Zalecki on, and Zalecki mentioned somebody like Drew Smiley maybe as a 5, and maybe you move Velazquez back. You figure Eflin then as the 4. And with the idea that Spencer Howard comes up at some point this season and gets some starts. Look, I mean, you almost feel like a CIA operative who gets caught and you're digging for the cyanide capsule if you have to go see Vince Velasquez start again for this team. I mean, it's like enough. And same with Nick Pivetta. I mean, but can I rule that possibility out? No, because I don't know if there's many better options out there that they would be willing to spend for.
He's Kevin Cooney. Check out his Working the Beat podcast with Mike Kern. He just had Zalecki on, so you can check it out
on it once.
on Twitter. You were on it. Harry Mays was on it as well.
Oh, well, now I don't feel
I
so
listened
special
to it
anymore.
with Harry Mays. I listen to it all the time. And the guys do a great job. Kevin and Mike, longtime beat guys. And Kevin, of course, check out his piece at Philly Voice on the Zack Wheeler signing. And he joined us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Kev, take care, pal.
All right, thanks, Mike.